Derek Langston stood in his barn, boots planted firm on the old wooden boards. But something wasn't right. This floor had always been solid, built strong by his grandfather more than 40 years ago. Yet now when Derek walked across one corner, it gave back a hollow sound. A sound that had no place in a barn with packed earth beneath it. He paused from fixing a corner post and leaned down, pressing his ear against the planks. The echo was real, clear as day. Derek had lived on this land all his life, crossed these floors more times than he could count, and never once had he heard anything like it. His grandfather had built every inch of this place with his own hands. Every fence, every beam. There weren't supposed to be any secrets here, but Derek's crowbar pried up one board, then another. By the third, his breath caught. Beneath the floor was a rectangular opening, dark and hidden with wooden steps leading down. Worn steps, steps that looked used. But by who? His grandfather had been gone 15 years, and Derek had been alone on this land ever since. He struck a match and lowered himself into the tunnel. The flame flickered, throwing light on support beams and carved walls. This wasn't some quick hiding hole. It was steady work, planned and built by someone who knew what they were doing. And at his feet in the dust, Derek saw something that stopped him cold. Fresh footprints. Someone had been down here. Not years ago. Days ago. The tunnel stretched farther than his light could reach. But at the edge of the glow, Derek spotted a chair, a table, and belongings arranged like someone had been living there. A tin cup still damp, a plate with crumbs not yet covered in dust, a blanket folded neat on a makeshift bed. This wasn't a shelter. It was a home. Derek's hands shook as he picked up a book stacked by the wall. Inside, in his grandfather's handwriting, were the words, "Property of Samuel Langston, 1851. His grandfather's name, his mark. But these books had never been in the house above. Beneath the table sat a metal box with a simple latch. Derek opened it and found deeds to properties he didn't know, letters to his grandfather from strangers, and at the bottom, a photograph. 3 men stood in front of the very barn above his head. His grandfather was one of them, younger than Derek had ever seen him. The other 2 were unknown, yet something in their faces felt unsettlingly familiar. On the back of the photo, his grandfather had written, "The agreement holds." The land stays divided. No one speaks of what happened here. Cassell, 1852. The match burned low, searing Derek's fingers before he dropped it. Questions filled his mind. What agreement? What had happened on this land that had to stay buried? And why had his grandfather gone to such lengths to hide it? He lit another match. That's when he noticed candle wax still soft on the table and ash fresh in a small dish. Whoever had been living down here hadn't just left behind traces of the past. They were still here. Somewhere close. Derek Langston knew this land was his. He had inherited it fair and legal, passed down from his grandfather who had worked the soil for decades. No one else had a claim here. No one else should have even known a tunnel existed. Then came the sound. Footsteps. Heavy, measured right above his head on the barn floor. Derek froze. He lived alone. There were no neighbors for miles, no visitors expected. Whoever had been using that tunnel had come back. He snuffed out his match and pressed himself against the cool wall, listening. The steps moved steady, purposeful, like the walker knew where they were headed. Then they stopped, directly above the hidden entrance. A woman's voice carried down through the boards, calm and sure. "You can come up now, Derek. I know you're down there." His heart pounded hard enough to hurt. No one should know his name. No one should know about the tunnel. No one had the right to stand in his barn and talk like they belonged there. "I'm not moving an inch till you explain what this is," he called back. Trying to keep steady. "That's exactly why I'm here," she replied. "But I'd rather not shout through a floor. My name is Olivia Harrow. I've been waiting 3 months for you to uncover that tunnel." Derek climbed the steps slow, suspicion thick in his chest. When he stepped into the barn, he saw her. A woman about his age, dark hair tied back, sharp eyes that seemed to measure everything about him. She wore a plain traveling dress and carried a weathered leather satchel. "How do you know my name?" Derek asked. "I know more than your name," Olivia said evenly. "I know you inherited this land from Samuel Langston. I know you've lived here alone since his passing. And I know today is the first time you've seen that tunnel." She set her satchel on a hay bale and drew out a thick folder. "What I need to know is whether you're ready to hear the truth about what your grandfather did here." Derek bristled. My grandfather was an honest man. He earned every inch of this place. Her expression hardened. Your grandfather was part of something larger, something meant to stay hidden forever, but times have changed. The families involved can't keep it buried any longer. She slid a paper into his hands, a contract in Samuel's handwriting dated 1852. The words twisted Derek's stomach. References to shared ownership, rotating residence, secrecy from authorities. At the bottom sat 3 signatures: Samuel Langston, Thomas Harrow, and William Cross. Thomas Harrow was my grandfather, Olivia said quietly. And according to this agreement, my family owns 1/3 of this land you've been walking your whole life. We kept our part of the bargain, stayed hidden. But the contract ends next month. After that, we reclaim what is ours. Derek's head spun. That's impossible. I have the deed. It's been in my family for decades. You have one deed, Olivia countered. But there are 2 more, hidden where your grandfather never told you. And those families are on their way to claim them. As if on cue, the sound of horses drifted across the valley, closer with every second. Derek clutched the paper, his world shifting under his boots. You're saying someone else has been living in that tunnel, and it wasn't you? He asked. I've never set foot down there, Olivia answered firmly. I only knew it from my grandfather's maps. But if someone's been using it, her voice trailed off, concern replacing her steady tone. Show me what you found. Together they descended once more into the dark. Derek struck a fresh match and Olivia studied the signs. Soft candle wax, a damp cup, belongings carefully arranged. Her face grew pale. This changes everything, she whispered, picking up a book marked in Samuel Langston's hand. These are your grandfather's, but someone has been tending to them. Someone who knows about the pact. What pact? Derek demanded. What was so important it had to be buried underground? Olivia's eyes flickered in the weak glow. In 1852, they found something on this land. Something valuable enough that 3 families chose secrecy over surrendering it to the territory. My grandfather's notes called it the discovery that would change everything. But he never said what it was. The sound of horses carried closer, mixed with the creak of wagon wheels and the sharp bark of men giving orders. Derek counted at least 4 voices, maybe more. Olivia's face tightened. Those aren't mine. I came alone. Derek clutched the metal box of his grandfather's papers. Then who are they? The 3rd family, she answered quickly. It has to be. William Cross signed that contract beside our grandfather's. If his people know about the tunnel, if they've been watching this land. Heavy boots crossed the barn floor above them. A commanding voice thundered through the boards. Miss Harrow, we know you're here. Your horse is tied outside. And Mr. Langston, we know you've uncovered the entrance. Towson's hiding now. Derek and Olivia locked eyes. Someone had been watching them both, waiting for this moment. We need to see what's in that tunnel, the voice continued. All of it. Not just the living quarters. Every chamber your grandfather's sealed off. The contract expires in 3 weeks and we'll have what we're owed. Back chambers? Derek whispered. Olivia nodded toward the darkness where his matchlight ended. According to my grandfather's maps, this tunnel runs much deeper. At least 3 more rooms, though they were supposed to be sealed for good. Then came a new sound, metal scraping against wood. Someone was forcing up more boards, opening another way down. They know other entrances, Olivia breathed. Boots thudded against steps, echoing closer. Derek's gut sank. His grandfather had built more access points than he ever guessed, and the Cross family knew them all. A lantern's glow broke the darkness ahead. 3 men advanced, shadows stretching long across the tunnel. The leader, tall with graying hair and sharp features, stepped forward. His face carried the same look Derek had seen in that old photograph. Marcus Cross, the man said, his voice steady with authority. And you must be Samuel Langston's grandson. You've got his face? Derek instinctively moved in front of Olivia. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Your grandfather cost my family a fortune, Mr. Langston. For near 50 years we let this land appear as one man's property. But the contract was clear. Once the signers were gone, the profits would be divided equally. He gestured to the 2 men at his side. My sons have been tending this place, keeping the tunnels sound, guarding the sealed chambers. We've lived down here in shifts, waiting for Miss Harrow to arrive and for you to finally stumble on what was left behind. Derek's breath caught. You're the ones who've been living down here. Someone had to protect the assets, Marcus replied coolly, especially once we heard Miss Harrow was ready to claim her share. We couldn't risk her reaching the chambers without us present. Olivia's voice cut in tight with frustration. And what exactly is in those chambers? Marcus gave a thin smile. Your grandfathers were clever. They found something the territory would have seized the moment word got out. Something rich enough to keep 3 families fed for generations. He pressed a hand against one of the tunnel beams. A hidden panel slid open, releasing a chill draft heavy with a metallic tang. Silver ore, Marcus declared. A vein runs under this land. Your grandfathers built these tunnels to mine it in secret. No filings, no taxes, no government meddling. Derek stared into the hidden opening, the truth finally dawning. That was why they'd kept silent, why they split the land among themselves. Marcus's voice turned hard. For 50 years, that silver has been stockpiled in these chambers, waiting for the agreement to run its course. Now it's time to divide it. But first, we need to know whether you and Miss Harrow plan to honor the pact, or if you intend to steal what rightfully belongs to all 3 families. One of Marcus's sons leaned close and whispered fast. Whatever he said drained the color from Marcus's face. Impossible, Marcus muttered. You're certain? The back chamber is empty, Father, the son replied. Every bit of it. Someone's been here already. Marcus led the group through the hidden panel. The chamber stretched farther than Derek had imagined, shelves and crates lining the walls, all of them bare. Mining tools lay scattered across the floor, and deep grooves in the rock told of years of steady work. 50 years, Marcus said bitterly, running a hand along the empty boards. Generations of secret labor. All gone. Derek crouched near the tools. The iron wasn't rusted, and fine dust clung to the handles. These were used recently, he said quietly. One of Marcus's sons nodded. Fresh cuts in the rock, new support beams. Someone's been digging here within months. Olivia stooped and lifted a torn slip of paper. A transport record, she murmured. Loads of raw silver moved out. Signed 3 months ago, though the name is smeared. 3 months? Derek's voice caught. That's the same time you said you started waiting for me to find the tunnel. Suspicion darkened Marcus's eyes. Mighty convenient, Miss Harrow. You arrived just as the silver vanishes. I had nothing to do with this, Olivia said firmly. I've been studying my grandfather's papers for a year. Only 3 months back did I learn where this land was. From who? Derek pressed. She hesitated, guilt flashing across her face. A lawyer in Millfield. James Edwards. He said he'd been holding my grandfather's papers since 1852. Marcus's eyes narrowed. What was his office? Above the general store. Derek shook his head slowly. That office has been empty for years, and there's no lawyer named Edwards in Millfield. A heavy silence filled the chamber. Finally Marcus spoke, voice low and hard. Someone's been playing all 3 of our families. Someone who knew the contract, knew the silver, and set us against each other. Olivia's voice was barely a whisper. But who else could have known? Derek thought of the old photograph. 3 men standing together before everything soured. Someone they trusted, he said. Someone who's waited half a century for the right moment. Then came the sound. Slow, deliberate applause echoing from the main chamber. Lantern light caught the figure of a woman stepping forward. She was older, silver-haired, with eyes that burned with decades of stored anger. Well done, she said, her voice carrying a faint accent Derek couldn't place. You've solved part of it, Mr. Langston. Someone your grandfathers trusted. Someone they betrayed. It took me 30 years to uncover what truly happened here. Marcus shifted protectively in front of his sons. Who are you? Elena Vasquez, she answered. Granddaughter of Roberto Vasquez, the man who found this silver in 1851. The man your grandfathers silenced so they could steal his claim. Derek felt the blood leave his face. No, my grandfather was an honest man. Her gaze hardened. Your grandfather, along with Harrow and Cross, chose greed. Roberto came to them as a partner, showed them the vein, asked for their help to file it proper. Instead, they buried the truth and divided the spoils. She drew a worn leather journal from her coat. This was his. Every meeting, every suspicion, every word, written down. His last entry was made the night before he vanished. She opened the journal, the brittle pages catching the lantern glow, and began to read aloud. The journal entry was short, but its weight was heavy. They have agreed to meet me at dawn to settle the partnership contracts. Samuel suggested we gather in the tunnel he's been building. I pray my fears are wrong. But I do not think I will see another sunrise. Olivia gripped Derek's arm, her face pale. The sealed chambers. What if they weren't just for silver? Eleanor's voice was steady. They weren't. 3 months ago, I found my grandfather's remains in that back chamber, along with the truth of how he died. Your grandfathers didn't just take his discovery. They silenced him and built this whole empire on top of his grave, Marcus whispered, shaken. How do you know all this? Because I spent 30 years chasing every lead, Elena answered. Documents, witnesses, scraps of evidence. Piece by piece, I proved what happened here. And once I had the truth, I took back what was stolen. She gave a cold smile. Every ounce of silver belonged to Roberto Vasquez. I simply collected what was his. Derek's chest tightened as the truth struck. You were the lawyer. You set this whole thing up. I wanted you to see it for yourself, Elena said calmly. To know that everything your family's built was founded on betrayal. The silver is gone, yes, but it was never yours. Marcus's voice snapped sharp. Where is it now? Being put to work, Elena replied. Schools, hospitals, towns where the Vasquez name still carries weight. Places where we are remembered as more than victims. You can't prove any of this, Derek said. Though the words sounded hollow even to him, Elena's smile widened. I don't need to. I just needed to watch you all discover the truth and turn against each other. Derek's world crumbled. The barn he had repaired, the land he had worked, the family name he had cherished, every piece of it stained with a history he had never known. Show us, he said quietly. Show us the proof. Eleanor led them deeper into a chamber Derek had never seen. Behind a false wall lay the skeletal remains of a man, a silver crucifix, a leather pouch of mining tools, and a skull with a single hole in the back. Roberto Vasquez was shot from behind, Elena said flatly. Murdered while standing over the silver vein he discovered. Your grandfathers buried him here and built their fortune on top of his grave. Marcus stood frozen, his sons speechless. Olivia knelt beside the remains, her voice trembling. All these years we believed our grandfathers were pioneers. Honest men, but they were killers. Elena's eyes swept over the chamber. Now you must decide what to do with this knowledge. The silver is gone, but this land, this house, this barn, it all should belong to Roberto's descendants. Derek's gaze traveled the chamber. Every stone, every beam, every board felt different now. This wasn't his family's legacy. It was a tomb. I can't stay here, Derek said, the word surprising even him. I can't work stolen land. I can't sleep above an unmarked grave. Marcus's voice cracked. What are you saying? I'm saying Elena is right, Derek replied firmly. This doesn't belong to us. It belongs to Roberto's family. We need to make it right. Elena's expression softened, if only slightly. That's honorable, Mr. Langston. But Roberto's only child died young. His widow remarried and left. I'm the closest living blood he has. Derek felt something shift inside him. Fear, yes, but also a strange freedom. Then it belongs to you. The land, the barn, the house. I'll sign over the deed. I'll start over somewhere else. No, Olivia protested. You can't give up everything you've ever known. Everything I knew was built on a lie, Derek answered, his voice steady. I won't profit from murder. I won't carry a legacy that was stolen. Elena studied him with a hard, measuring look. You understand what you're giving up. This land is worth more than the silver ever was. I know what it means to keep this land, Derek said quietly. It means becoming part of the crime, and I won't do that. 3 days later, he stood inside the county lawyer's office, pen in hand. His signature flowed steady across the page, though the paper carried the weight of generations. With that name, Derek Langston gave up the only home he had ever known. Elena Vasquez insisted on paying him fair for the property, and Derek planned to use the money to start fresh, far from the shadows of his grandfather's deeds. Marcus Cross and his sons had already made the same choice, surrendering their claim without a fight. Olivia had hesitated longer, but even she chose not to carry blood money forward. Roberto will have a proper resting place at last, Eleanor said, as Derek handed her the deed. After 50 years in an unmarked grave, he'll lie in consecrated ground with his name carved in stone. Derek nodded, a weight lifting off him he hadn't realized was there. For 35 years, he'd carried what he thought was duty. Now he saw it for what it was, guilt passed down like a curse. Outside the office, Olivia asked softly, "What will you do now?" "Head west," Derek said. "Find work where an extra hand's needed. Build something honest, piece by piece. For the first time, everything I own will be earned." Marcus waited by the horses, his face showing the same mixture of loss and relief Derek felt. "I never thanked you, Langston, for not fighting to keep what was never ours." "We all did the right thing," Derek answered. "That just took us 50 years too long." Elena stepped into the sunlight behind them, the deed clutched in her hand. Roberto wanted his discovery to help people, not divide them. Maybe now it finally will. Derek mounted up, taking one last look at the town that had always known him as Samuel Langston's grandson. Tomorrow he'd ride into country where no one knew his name or his family's history. He would introduce himself simply as Derek, a man looking for honest work and a chance to build something true. The thought was frightening, yet it filled him with a freedom he had never felt. The man who uncovered the tunnel 3 days earlier no longer existed. In his place was someone who chose principle over profit, integrity over inheritance, and for the first time in his 35 years, Derek Langston felt free. If you enjoyed this story, tap the video on your screen now to hear another unforgettable tale of honor and truth in the old frontier. Don't forget to subscribe, and consider supporting with a super chat so we can keep bringing you stories like this one. Your support means everything.